The Greeks developed a unique society due to their more liberal views on sexuality, homosexuality, and romantic partnerships. Interested in these views? Let's examine the strange sexual practices of the ancient Greeks. Extremely odd methods of birth control. Ancient Greek couples tried to reduce their offspring count with the use of quackery and pseudoscience. Having the female partner sneeze and then drink something cold after sex was a common practice. An additional technique entailed a woman attempting to block her cervix with a piece of wood. This one doesn't seem very appealing. The Greeks found surprising success by eating a lot of dates and pomegranates before and after sexual activity. According to recent research, both dates and pomegranates can have the effect of decreasing fertility. A cultural norm of public masturbation. Most people today agree that masturbation is something that should take place in private. The notorious Greek philosopher Diogenes used public masturbation as a weapon against the establishment. Many of his detractors mocked Diogenes, the father of cynicism, by calling him a dog and putting him in a barrel. When confronted about his penchant for public relief, Diogenes said, "If only it were so easy to soothe hunger by stroking an empty belly." The Spartans get a good roasting in Aristophanes' classic comedy Lysistrata, which is about women refusing sex with males to prevent conflict. Kissing women was seen as strange. When compared to some of the other odd things on this list, it's puzzling that kissing would be seen as abnormal in any context. Ancient Greek culture suggests that kissing one's wife is a sign of weakness for a guy. Some people thought it was inappropriate for Pericles, a famous Athenian general, to kiss his wife on the lips so often in public. The primary reason behind this is that in ancient Greek culture, a kiss was a sign of equality between two people, and in most Greek city-states, women were not considered to be equal to males. Forced prostitution by the government. Prostitution was legal, and in some cases, state-run in ancient Greece, which may make it hard to picture presidential candidates arguing rates in state-run prostitution rings. Solon, an Athenian politician, set pricing controls on the state-run brothels of his time. Both male and female sex workers were employed in these establishments, with the latter catering mostly to a clientele of an older demographic. Many of these businesses appear to provide significantly lower prices than do street prostitutes, who use sandals that leave a "follow me" mark on the ground. The public brothel did offer some variety to the upper class. Clients in this category could hire a mistress, a female employee with the training and experience to sexually and intellectually satisfy male clients. It was common for men to engage in pedophilia. Young boys were routinely used by older adults in Spartan culture, especially during military training. Many young boys fell prey to abuse at the hands of their training mentors, a practice whose frequency and social acceptability are up for discussion. Spartan boys were drafted into state-sponsored military training as early as the age of 7. The lads would undergo extensive military training to prepare them for a future career as warriors. These lads' male classmates often served as their first sexual partners. In ancient Greek culture, same-sex relationships were not only accepted, but celebrated as a mark of male camaraderie. Reportedly, the social acceptability of male role models dating their mentees varies widely, drawing penises all over the place. These days, this sort of artwork is usually only seen in men's loos. The public's knowledge of the Greeks' artistic pride and the prominence of nudity in their statues is widespread. For reportedly slicing off Hermes' member on a significant statue, one Athenian statesman was put to death. The Greeks were known to slap a phallus onto the base of a statue for no apparent reason. However, statues weren't the only way Greeks showed off their wangs. False ideas would be depicted in everything from public art to wine glasses by talented painters. The inebriated Greeks who drank from these kylixes at the legendary symposia or wine-drinking gatherings likely regarded the depictions to be humorous. A woman cultivating a crop field of phalluses was even represented on a vase. The sexuality of religion. Practitioners of Greek polytheism based their religion mostly on rituals of sacrifice and adoration of the gods. Since she was also the goddess of love and sexuality, Aphrodite was frequently prayed to for advice on sexual concerns. Aphrodite had a particular backstory. Her name, which means foam arisen, comes from the legend that she sprang from the ocean foam created when Uranus's genitalia fell into the water. The sexuality and beauty of Aphrodite, who engaged in adultery with numerous men, is a central theme in Greek mythology. Famous for her part in the judgment of Paris and the beginning of the Trojan War, Helen is a prime example of a temperamental and vain character. Adultery was worse than rape. The stringent rules regarding adultery may appear odd in light of the relaxed attitude towards sexuality in Greece. When compared to rape, wooing another man's wife was seen as an even greater crime. The idea that a woman is someone's property explains why this is the case. Because of this, we can now say that adultery is a sort of theft. Assaulting a woman sexually was also seen as wrong, but it wasn't seen as a big deal if she wasn't married. Many Greek gods are depicted as sexually assaulting women and getting them pregnant through deception. Adultery, according to historian Herodotus, warranted the man's vengeance, whereas assault did not. Hence, the former was punished more harshly. A husband who caught his cheating wife could do whatever he wanted to her. This included anything from shunning her in public to taking her life. Insane alcoholic get-togethers. One of the Greeks' favorite beverages was wine. The symposium had a significant role in ancient Greek society. On the plush couches of an inner chamber, anywhere from 14 to 27 men would gather for deep conversations. Plato's Symposium is just one of several well-known works of literature that portray the philosophically dense conversations that took place at the symposium. The literary picture of the symposia, though, may be more courteous than what actually occurred there. Large quantities of alcohol, drinking games, and drinking songs could lead to insanity. It was common to practice hiring musicians and other entertainers for the symposium, and it wasn't uncommon for them to engage in sexual favors for the attendees. Women were not allowed at the symposia, but high-end prostitutes were occasionally hired for attendees' convenience. Masculinity was more attractive. As was said before, the military was often the setting for initial connections between young Spartan males. For this reason, it was customary for a Spartan groom to insist that his new bride shave her head and dress more masculinely before they had sex. On their wedding day, Spartan brides would dress as men and shave their heads so that their husbands could make the symbolic move from same-sex to heterosexual partnerships. A bridesmaid or servant would typically perform the shift from female to male form for a wedding, in stark contrast to the present-day makeover. So husbands would have to sneak into their houses at night to have sexual relations with their partners. It was believed that doing so would increase a couple's desire to have sexual relations. The groom's coat and sandals would be placed on the bed, and the bride would be left in the dark. Then, throughout the night, her new partner would enter her room and kidnap her. The bottom line: and contemporary fiction frequently romanticize feudal Japan. During this period, strong samurai, beautiful courtesans, and an air of formality pervaded all aspects of life. Although sex in feudal Japan was also frequently glorified, it was far less refined and formal than is commonly believed. Stay tuned as we delve into the dirty details of what sex was really like in feudal Japan. Several of these sex implements from feudal Japan are truly bizarre. To give one example, it was common practice for samurai to have sex with boys as young as 12 years old during their formal apprenticeships. Unlike their female counterparts, aristocratic men were permitted to have many wives and concubines. In feudal Japan, one's social status had a significant impact on one's sexual life. One's sexual partner was often from the same socio-economic class. Teens from feudal Japan's lower classes could have as much sex as they wanted, while those from upper classes were limited in who they may see and marry, and many more. Let's see some more details. The samurai, way of the young, encouraged parent-child interactions. You could associate the samurai with aggression, honor, devotion, and a rigid code of conduct when you hear the name. If you want a complete definition of a samurai, you should include anal play and hookups with kids. The way of the warrior was a code that guided samurai life and included several important tenets. One of these guidelines was called Shudo, short for Wakashudo, or Method of Teenage Guys. Shudo recommended that samurai take on young male lovers, typically between the ages of 12 and 18. The monks were sick, lascivious psychopaths. The historical record reveals significant sexual differences between Japanese Buddhist monks and European Christian monks. Some Buddhists take a vow of chastity, yet the iconoclastic Zen monk Ikki once remarked, "Follow the precept of celibacy, and you are little more than an A." The Buddhist monks were notorious for their open participation in nanshoko, or pederast relationships, with their juvenile male disciples. Many monks also had non-traditional relationships with women. Ikki even tied the knot with a female companion after being exhausted with homosexual delights. Intimate get-togethers in farm. Teenagers in feudal Japan's agricultural class sometimes had greater personal freedom than their urban counterparts. Teens from affluent families had to follow a strict set of social norms and observe several rituals and traditions. Their romantic and personal lives were strictly governed by their families and subject to the approval of other aristocrats. Teenage farmers, on the other hand, might have as many sex partners as they wanted, so long as all of their friends were also farmers. The phenomenon of homosexuality was not uncommon. Homosexuality and bisexuality were not stigmatized in feudal Japan. In reality, sexual encounters between males were sometimes admired and cherished, but those between men and women were seen as draining to men's spiritual well-being. It was common practice for senior monks to have homosexual relationships with the novices they trained. Homosexuality was accepted and even encouraged in the military, and male sex workers served both male and female customers. Relationships between monks and samurai frequently terminated when one or both parties reached adulthood. For samurai, this happened when the apprentice became a warrior. For monks, this happened when the acolyte became a temple member of equal standing to his lover, or a fully fledged monk. The first Japanese creation myth heavily featured sexual content. Japan's indigenous Shinto religion has been practiced in varying forms for thousands of years, with its written history beginning in 712 CE. The Shinto creation story asserts that sexual activity came first, followed by the development of a nation and its inhabitants. According to this tale, an ancient being told another ancient creature, "Even while my body is formed in many places, there is one spot that is formed to an excessive degree. Therefore, to give birth to the land, I would like you to take the area in your body that is formed inadequately and insert it into the place in my body that is formed excessively. This will allow me to give birth to the land." What do you think about that? For spiritual enlightenment, sexual pleasure was a must. The Shingon sect, called Tachikawa-yu, was the most prominent sex cult in Japan. The cult believed that sexual intimacy was the key to reaching enlightenment because it leads to a complete dissolution of the ego. Doing the action was central to the religious and spiritual practices of Tachikawa-yu Buddhists. They saw it as a good deed and separated it from its role in procreation, making it more than just a symbol or ideal. According to the Tachikawa-yu doctrine, the loss of self in the deed could lead to an awakening of the spirit. An evaluation of the top male sexual performers. Japanese feudalism valued social status above anything else. To a lesser extent, this also applied to those who actively sought financial gain. There was a clear hierarchy between the ordinary night laborers and the exquisite courtesans in even the most upscale brothels. Those of lower status were termed ijo, while those of higher status were called oiran, an abbreviation of Oira no Tokoro no Nisan, literally the older sisters of our place. The oiran were highly respected due to their reputation as trained entertainers. There was no way for customers to get in touch with the oiran directly, and they had to make 2 trips to the shop before they could get any service, usually a nearby tea house. If an oiran didn't think a man was worthy, she would often turn him down. Oiran, or high-class courtesans, were educated in the arts of dancing, song, painting, poetry, calligraphy, and the tea ceremony. It was reported that the males who visited these women found them to be pleasant, calm, and joyful. This was all an act, And many of these fortunate girls had their sex with men forced upon them in exchange for financial compensation. After being made to buy expensive clothes and cosmetics for their madams, many of the prostitutes found themselves in debt to the women who exploited them. They were subjected to rigorous training, long hours of labor, and deplorable housing conditions. Geishas, who were both less expensive and more fashionable, soon displaced the more traditional courtesans. Marriages between women were monogamous, while marriages between men were not. It should not come as a surprise that feudal Japan's marital customs were marked by severe hypocrisy and double standards. The aforementioned Heian period court weddings were organized and frequently polygamous. In legal terms, a man was allowed to have several partners. However, women were only allowed to have one legal spouse at any given time. This did not stop the women of the upper class from conducting their own discreet business. A marriage did not last forever. Marriage for Japanese upper-class couples was not always for life during the Heian period, 794 to 1185 CE. Marriages between people of different social classes were frowned upon at the time in Japan. Therefore, unions were often arranged or sanctioned by families. Traditionally in Japan, affluent individuals would wed, raise a family, and then divorce if a more financially secure partner became available. Poorer people could not afford to get married more than once. Therefore, many couples stayed together for life. This ends our video for today. What are your thoughts on this? Tell us in the comments. Also, like, share, and subscribe to the channel to see more historical facts and videos.